everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 399 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about habits, right? And specifically money habits that can help you become wealthy over a long period of time, right? And you may say, well, there's no way that I could become wealthy. There's no way that I could build wealth. There's no way that I could employ good money management. Well, that's just not true, right? You can do what some of the wealthiest people do. You can become, some semblance of wealthy over time if you just employ certain habits that are going to help you get there. And so I'm going to discuss all of these habits and exactly how you can employ them in your own life. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, there's a few things that I just get tired of people saying about money, about their financial situation, about any number of things. I just get tired of it, right? And one of the things that I hate the most is people's disbelief, right? They do not believe that they can build wealth. They do not believe that they can be successful financially, right? They believe that where they are is where they're going to be, and that's just that. And that is just not the truth, right? Just like everything else in our life, right, that we have any type of control over, the habits that we employ, the habits that we choose to put into place are going to be the things that get us to where we want to be over the long term. That's just fact, right? The more that we employ healthy habits, good habits that look like those who are successful at whatever the thing is that we're trying to be successful at, then the more likely we're going to be successful just like those people, right? I think about this just as a baseball guy, for instance. For years, it was touted the work that Derek Jeter did hitting off of a tee, right? And how much he just hit off a tee every single day before the game that day, and it is pretty amazing. But what it really made you think about was like, okay, this is one of his habits that makes him great, right? It's one of the habits that makes him so good at playing baseball, right? And so many people tried to take on that approach of, hitting off the tee, but very few would do it as much or as effectively as he did. So very few are as great as he was, but you can, and I'm sure some people did, attain some type of success based on the things that they were doing, like Derek Jeter or like whomever, like whatever sports idol, right? For instance, Tom Brady, right? He has the TB12 method. Well, not everybody who employs the TB12 method is going to become the greatest quarterback of all time, right? But that doesn't mean that it can't make you better. And so that's what I want you to think about when I'm talking about these money habits. That just because you may not become Bill Gates because of these money habits doesn't mean that it can't make you successful. And I think that's one of the biggest, misconceptions that a lot of people have. They think that if it's not going to make you the top of the top, then it's not worth trying. And that's absolutely not true. The odds of becoming the top of the top when it comes to building wealth is outrageously low. Right? It's outrageously low to become a billionaire, right? It's outrageously low to become somebody who's, on the Forbes lists, right? It's outrageously low likelihoods. Now, is it possible? Sure, right? And if you shoot for that, is it likely that you'll attain some type of success? Probably, right? But it does not mean that it's the only way to do things, and it does not mean that building wealth has to be done in a way that looks just like a billionaire. So these money habits I want to talk about today, they are specifically from the CFP, who says that his wealthiest self-made millionaire clients do these things, right? So these are the wealthiest self-made millionaires that he has. And so I think many people, we want to be wealthy, and many of us, come from households that weren't, very wealthy and want to build things in a self-made way, right? So you want to listen to this. You want to take heed to this and employ these habits in your own life. And if you've watched or listened to this show for any period of time, these habits are not going to sound too, off the wall, right? These are things that I actually teach and I actually employ in my own life. And that I want to just, reiterate to you all. And then if you're watching this for the first time, I want to make it very clear that these are things that are going to get you to long-term financial freedom. So the very first thing, and I love that it's the very first thing because it gets overlooked so many times, but the first habit that the wealthiest self-made millionaires do is that they avoid debt. Oh my goodness. It feels good to know that the wealthy people aren't out here just leveraging their life away. They avoid debt. Now, this may seem obvious, right? But dodging any debt is certainly a habit that can help your overall financial picture. Outside of the mortgages on their homes, these clients, they make sure to reduce and eliminate all debt, right? If you want to build wealth, you cannot waste money on paying interest on consumer credit, such as credit cards or even car loans, right? And gosh, I say this all the time. Debt is a strain on your cash flow, right? And if you're going to have your cash flow strained, then you're not going to have the ability to build wealth in the same way. Now, because most credit cards charge notoriously high interest rates, whenever you carry a balance, prioritize paying these balances off in full every single month in order to keep our credit score good and to get these things paid off. If you don't, you should get rid of the credit card. Now, only charge what you know you can pay off and avoid store credit cards in general. But ultimately, we want to stay away from all types of debt. Obviously, depreciating assets like vehicles, we want to stay out of student loans. We want to stay out of all types of debt if at all possible. And this will help us to keep our cash flow and to build wealth over a long period of time. So the first thing that millionaires do, wealthy people do, they avoid debt. Now, what's the second thing? Now, the second thing is very similar to the first, kind of builds on the first, right? But the second thing they do is they buy their cars and they plan to keep them long term. Okay, so for the most part, cars depreciate in value the second that you drive off the lot. We know this, right? We know that cars are depreciating assets, and so they are going down in value all of the time. Now, this CFP says that his self-made millionaire clients typically buy instead of lease any new car with plans to hold on to it for a while, right? They're not out here purchasing vehicles just to turn them back in a few years later. They're not out here purchasing vehicles, just with the thought process of in a couple years, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy another one. I'm going to trade this in and buy another one. They're not doing that, right? By keeping their cars long term, they can use the time between car purchases to save up cash that would otherwise go towards a monthly payment, right? We know the value in doing so. We know that let's just use, for example, right? A $25,000 vehicle. So if I want to know what the payment was going to be on, let's say you get a 3% loan, just for instance, over 72 months. So a 6-year loan on a $25,000 vehicle. Okay. And you're going to ultimately pay that loan off. You would be paying $379.84 a month. So not a crazy payment, but seems crazy to me because I don't make car payments, and nor do these wealthy clients. But if you took that and you multiplied it out by 72, the number of payments that you're going to make in that particular amount, right? You multiply that out by 72, that's going to be $27,348.62. Okay. Well, that is $2,348.62 more than the price of the vehicle. And so you ultimately paid more than you would have otherwise based on the fact that you financed whatever it was, and you financed something that decreased in value over time. So not only did you pay more, the thing became worth less over time. So wouldn't you rather pay less and it become worth less over time? Of course you would, right? You want less of a disparity in that way. Okay. Now, if you need to finance a car, let's say that you're just in dire straits, you have no money, you absolutely have to have a car. You want to have that thing just, it doesn't need to be anything nice if you're in that type of situation. You need to get it paid off as soon as possible. You need to be very, 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 very cheap. and then just work towards building up in car over time, right? Because ultimately anything you buy is going to have some type of trade-in value. And so you can just level up over time. And luckily, the depreciation in vehicles is it depreciates in a slowing manner over time, right? There's a decreasing marginal depreciation over time, which is valuable because if they all depreciated at the exact same amount as they did at the very beginning every single year, then that would be problematic. So nonetheless, these wealthy people, what do? They buy their cars and they plan on keeping them long term, okay? Then what else? They have emergency funds, right? So another habit that they have is building up emergency funds. So having a solid reserve of cash that you can tap into in an emergency goes a long way. If you have an unexpected expense, such as an urgent car repair or medical bills, a rainy day fund is immediately available for withdrawals that can help you afford it. This way, you don't need to charge the expense onto a high interest credit card or take out a personal loan, right? Most of the CFP's clients have 6 to 9 months of their monthly expenses set aside. Now, what do I suggest for you guys? I suggest 4 to 6 months of household expenses. I think that that's typically enough, right? But I think that it's extremely valuable to know that a lot of wealthy people have emergency funds, right? We feel like that having savings is a good thing. I think everybody kind of has that thought process that, hey, saving money is a good thing. But having money that is saved yet not invested is extremely valuable to us as well, right? It's extremely valuable because we have stability, right? I've told you before, emergency funds are insurance against tragedy. Emergency funds are not, this investment that we have. They're not anything but insurance. It's our spending money so that we don't have to spend large amounts of money later on, so that we know that we have money there that we can tap into, and we can ultimately take that money and put it towards things that need to be purchased, need to be paid for. Now, you may also, and I've talked about this a little bit before, incorporate, some portion of emergency funds towards just, let's say, your HSA or whatever, right? So if it's just medical bills, that can be something that's taken care of, but that should be above and beyond, let's say, at least 4 months of household expenses that you would put away in an emergency fund. But having this emergency fund is just going to shield you from life. It's going to shield you from tragedy occurring. And so when tragedy does occur, you can pay for it in cash and then just move right along. Now, ultimately, when we have emergency funds, we want to use them on emergencies and not be using them on just any old thing that may come up. But it is very, very important to note that these people are wealthy people and they have emergency funds. Why? Because they see the importance of shielding their wealth from the volatility of life, right? From the uncertainties of life. And I see this as being a very important thing that we should all be doing leading up to being very wealthy, but especially once you are as well. This is something that you should employ and that you should always keep on hand. You should always have emergency funds. That's why it's it's basically the first action other than budgeting that I have you do in the financial action plan. I tell you, hey, budget uniquely every single month, and then I tell you to start building an emergency fund. Now, I tell you to start small with the emergency fund, and then ultimately, after you get out of consumer debt, build it up to 4 to 6 months of household expenses. So these wealthy clients, they have emergency funds, okay? I love this article because it is just nailing home all these things that I teach you guys in the financial action plan. Now, the fourth thing, they invest. Now, this should be quite clear. This should be obvious that this is something that wealthy people do. Now, once building up an emergency fund, these clients have organized investment plans, whether it's in stocks, bonds, or ETFs, exchange traded funds. He suggests, the CFP, setting up monthly or bi-monthly automatic transfer of cash from your checking account into an investment account. This way you can forget about having to remember to manually invest, and you can learn to live on the funds that you have available. Most of the clients do not miss having the money in their cash flow, and then they can use those invested savings for future purchases, or obviously to fund their retirement or whatever else. And they won't ever have to incur debt because they have emergency funds. They have set their financial foundation up to where now they can invest and do so effectively. And I think that's so important. I think it's important to note that these people have their priorities straight, right? They get out of debt, they have emergency funds, then they're investing, right? They don't have these things out of order. They don't have these things where they're trying to do it all at once. They're trying to control how their cash flow gets used. They know that when you have debt, the best use of your cash flow is getting out of debt. And then they know that when you don't have an emergency fund, the best use of your cash flow is to build one up. And they know that once you have an emergency fund and you're out of debt, the best use of your cash flow is to invest, right? And that's what they do just systematically over time. Now, as a general rule of thumb, we talk about saving at least 15% of your income each month. And you put it towards, your future, your retirement plans, your taxable investments, if you invest in real estate, any of those types of things. Now, ultimately, you can invest some of that for your kids' college, their 529s, their UTMAs, their UGMAs, whatever, right? But just be thoughtful, at least 15% of your income. And that should be easy once you have done these other habits, once you have, gotten out of debt, built an emergency fund. Now we don't need to be saving money for anything other than maybe certain purchases that we would want to make. But other than that, now all of your cash flow is going towards your wants. It's going towards investing, and it can be going towards, really setting yourself up well for your future. Now, before you invest, you do need to make sure that you know how much risk you should take on, the time frame for which you'll need the money, why you're investing, all these types of things, right? And just be more generally well-versed in investing than I'm jumping into here. But you should be putting money away into tax-advantaged investment accounts and all those types of things over time. You'll just be better off for it. Now, what's another money habit that the wealthiest self-made millionaires do? They take advantage of everything that their employer has to offer. So what's this mean, right? It's worth looking over your employer's benefit plan thoroughly. Companies offer more than just retirement plans that can help you save money and even invest to earn more. Leveraging some of the benefits that employers offer can be helpful to you. So obviously the first, and it's the third part of the financial action plan, is the employer retirement match, right? So a match on a 401k or a 403b or whatever, right? If you can put money in and they can match that money, giving you 100% return immediately, that can be extremely valuable and extremely helpful to your ability to build wealth over a long period of time. So it's basically free money, and it's something that your employer offers, so I would take advantage. Then employer life or disability insurance. Your employer's group plans can offer significant savings versus buying insurance policies individually. That can be the case, but it can also be the case that, like for, let's say, term life insurance, for instance, that it can be more, valuable to actually do it on your own. But nonetheless, they can provide you with some of those things. And then disability insurance is valuable. An HSA, right? If you qualify for an HSA, some employers will match your contributions up to a certain amount, and your contributions are tax deferred, right? And then grow tax-free, and then you can take them out tax-free for qualified medical expenses. So that can be a useful tool as well. Then employer legal services, right? They may offer legal services if you ever need to have estate planning done, wills, trusts, all those types of things. It can be valuable as well. And then employee stock purchase plans, right, where you can buy the stock of the company, or stock option plans, ESOPs, things like that. Those can be valuable as well. So nonetheless, the wealthy, they take advantage of the things that their employers offer them. That's not saying that all of those things are necessary for everyone. That's just saying that those are things that employers do offer that may be available to you and may be things that can be very valuable. The most valuable by far, though, to me is the match on a 401k, a 403b, whatever other type of retirement account you may have. Now, the sixth habit of the wealthiest self-made millionaires are that they do not try to keep up with the Joneses, right? This is a typical way people dig themselves into debt and to overspending and all those things, but living beyond your means time and time again eventually catches up to you. When building wealth, these clients fight the need to have the latest and greatest gadgets. So much money is wasted on constant upgrades these days and can cost you both money and lost opportunity. It's only human to want to compare your life to others, but take another look at your lifestyle and budget, focusing on what's most important for your own personal goals. These are your needs and wants that truly matter to your bottom line and your happiness, right? So ultimately, we don't need to fear missing out. We don't need to fear that other people are going to have something and I don't have it. No, that's horrible and all these. It's not going to be value added to us to simply, worry about what the Joneses are doing, right? We need to worry about ourselves, do what we do, have our own plan, have our own agenda financially, and then just work towards those financial goals on a day-to-day basis, right? If you're doing all the right things, why in the world would you worry about what other people are doing? And that's something that's hard to reconcile sometimes. It's hard to reconcile that you're doing the right thing, even though you drive the less expensive car, or you live in a less expensive house or apartment, or you don't buy the name brand things, and yet you are making all of the right decisions, right? Because you absolutely do not understand how much money people just absolutely waste or buy things that they absolutely cannot afford over a long period of time. Then, the seventh thing that the wealthiest self-made clients do is that they utilize tax deductions. Now, when they can, they try to minimize the taxes that they pay. This includes finding some element of tax savings in everything from retirement plan investments, right? So you put money into an IRA, a 401k, or whatever, then you can get tax deductions. Put money into an HSA, you can get a tax deduction. You put money into college savings accounts for your kids, it's 529s, you can get tax deductions. All of that can be very valuable, right? And then there's also home mortgage interest that can be deductible, charitable contributions, right? They try to take advantage of all of these things in order to decrease the amount of taxes that they ultimately end up paying. Make sure that you are participating in the plans and programs that can have multiple benefits, right? This is an area where it'd be helpful to maybe consult a CPA or a CFP or somebody who can help you to walk through certain situations, right? But ultimately, they are utilizing these tax deductions for a simple reason, and that's because they want to keep their cash flow. That is something that I think should be clear in all of these habits. These habits are ultimately allowing the wealthy people to do what? Maintain their cash flow, keep their cash flow, keep the income that they have coming in to themselves, right? Instead of having to pay it out in debt payments, instead of having an emergency wipe it clean, instead of, just spending it all, right? Spending it all at once, or spending it on things that we don't really need or whatever. And then here, ultimately, instead of paying it out unnecessarily in taxes, do things that are going to benefit you and get tax deductions anyway, okay? So they utilize tax deductions. Then what else do? They look for other income streams, right? Many clients diversify their investment portfolios with other assets, such as rental properties that provide passive incomes, and they can reinvest in those ways. It's likely that the average person doesn't own multiple properties, but there are other rental opportunities that provide another source of passive income with little effort on your part. All these things can be done. I mean, some things to get you started could be, renting out a room in your house or apartment, turning your house or apartment or a room or something into an Airbnb, or renting out your car or whatever, right? I'm not suggesting that you do all these things. I'm just saying these are potential ways that you could get started in this whole rental mindset and getting other streams of income. Again, not only are wealthy people looking for the ability to maintain the cash flow that they do have, they're trying to increase their cash flow in other ways. And it's not always necessary, right? It's not always necessary to have tons of income streams per se, right? All that we're talking about when we say income streams here is just you make an investment, the investment creates some income. But it's, in many cases, you could argue that if you just invest that money, in the stock market or in whatever else, then you could earn better rates of return than the income that you were pulling off of those investments, and you could reinvest those incomes over time, right? Which is what many of these self-made millionaires do. Then the ninth thing that they do, the ninth habit that they employ, is they start saving for their kids' college early on, right? So college savings plans like a 529, they help the clients to kickstart their children's future education early, so they have less of a financial burden years later. But the long-term benefits don't just stop there. These plans also allow tax-free withdrawals when you take out the money to pay for college. So by getting started early, you can have a significant amount of money in future cash flow and tax savings. It does not take a lot to get started, but the power of compound returns can be so beneficial to you if you have time, right? So this is a very big habit because Just think about the thing that's holding maybe most of you back financially. It may definitely be student loans, right? It may definitely be the cost of college, the cost of getting an education and going to school. And I've said this many times, as much as, there's always a push for getting student loans forgiven and paid off and all these types of things, they've been talking about it for years and it's not happening, right? So the importance of saving money for your child, putting money away for your kid over the long term can decrease their burden. And so most people's idea of wanting to build wealth over generations can actually be brought to life, because now not only have you taken care of yourself and done the right things for yourself and make sure that you've built wealth for you and your spouse and whatever to live on and to leave behind, you've also put your kids in a good starting point to where they can have a bit of a head start to start moving forward as well. And this doesn't take large amounts of money, right? Saving for your kids' college can be very small amounts, and maybe you ramp it up over time. And there are other things that can make this a lot easier, right? I've talked about before, once you get your house paid off, then, paying for your kids' college can become a lot easier, because now it's like, oh, well, I don't have a house payment. So of course I can, save for my kids' college, or of course I can pay for my kids' college in cash. So that's just a potential way that may be the case. So the last habit, the last common money habit that a CFP says that his wealthiest self-made clients that are millionaires do, right, that we could all do, they seek advice. Now, does this mean that everybody needs to run out and get a financial advisor? No, it does not, right? But this does mean that you need to be gaining knowledge and you need to be gaining education about your finances over time. You do not need to just rest on the fact that you know everything. I don't even rest on that fact ever. I'm constantly reading new things, constantly learning new things, constantly seeking out, the advice of people who have done things that I have not, to see how it actually works, right? So these clients, they make a habit of being well informed about their money. And that's so key. It's so key to just be well informed. They have a basic understanding of their earnings, what they own, and how much their investments cost, right? They understand those little things, those little details that are very, very important to their ability to build wealth and maintain their wealth over a long period of time. Now, for many people, saving and investing money can certainly be intimidating and confusing. Luckily, there are plenty of free online resources to help you. I am one of said online resources, right? Just going to YouTube, there are many people who are useful and that you can listen to in this way. And I mean, obviously I'll push you towards my content, but there's plenty of others, right? Dave Ramsey does a fantastic job and he's one of the biggest fish in the area. Then you also have like the Money Guy podcast. I think they do a fantastic job. There's many that do really, really good jobs at informing you about your money and your financial situation, and can be very, very useful to where you don't have to hire a financial advisor. Now, I would warn against, a lot of the podcasts and YouTube channels really trying to sell you hard on things and not teach you and not be good stewards of their listenership or their viewership. And so I would just tell you, just from the bottom of my heart, I'm here to teach you guys every single day, provide you guys with some value, and not try to sell you on anything or whatever else, right? Just watch my videos, listen to my podcast episodes, and learn more, become more well versed, because that's what I'm trying to help you do. That's my whole point of these episodes, is to teach and to help you guys to become better managers of your own finances, right? Obviously, you can get a financial advisor, somebody you can sit one-on-one, and somebody that can help you in that way. But especially early on in your financial life, it may not be useful to actually hire an advisor and pay an advisor. Maybe better just to learn more and gain more of the free knowledge and free resources that are out there. And then maybe later on, you can use an advisor. So ultimately, what do we know here? What do we learn from all this? We learn that all of these habits are doable, right? They are things that we could all employ today, even from the lowest amount of wealth among us to the greatest. We could all employ these things. And I think that there's a reason that people become wealthy, and it's not inheritance. It's not privilege. It's the fact that they get this knowledge about their finances. They learn more, they become well versed, And then once they do, they put habits into place, because how easy is it, regardless of what you are given, to blow it, right? And most people blow an inheritance within a year, right? But the fact that you can actually build wealth over a long period of time requires discipline, it requires habits, and it requires you doing the right things at the right time and just being consistent and continuing. And that's what I want all of you guys to learn to do. So employ these habits in your own life, and you will be better off and will be able to build wealth, and hopefully will be somebody who's surveyed for a list like this in the future. So thanks for watching this video. If you could, go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video. Leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.